This is my surgical robot arm. It's a pretty cool piece of tech, but I bought it for one purpose: to do surgery on a grape just like the viral video. This is my journey to build a personal surgery robot. But before we begin, why am I doing this? Last year, at an event called Open Sauce, the owner of the channel Excessive Overkill brought a big industrial robot for people to play around with. It was a ton of fun, and ever since, I can't stop thinking about buying one for myself. But these machines are incredibly expensive, even used, and I don't know where I'd even keep one. So, instead of using a big industrial machine, I thought it'd be cool to go the opposite direction. Meet the Da Vinci Surgical System. It's a robot designed by Intuitive Surgical, the same company that made the robot from the original Surgery on a Grape video. While I'd love to buy one, normally these cost millions of dollars, so purchasing one is out of the question. But there is a way I can get some of their parts. See, hospitals can only use these a small number of times before they have to replace them. To get some of their money back, they sell them to businesses that turn around and sell them on eBay to people like me. Now that I have one to play with, it's surprisingly simple. At the end of the arm is a wrist and 2 grippers. On the underside of the hub here, there are 4 discs with little nubs on them. They rotate the shaft, bend the wrist, and move each of the 2 grippers. My long-term mission is to do surgery on a grape, but that's too hard, so I want to start simple. My current goal is to use the arm to pick up a raisin, move it, and put it down. I need 3 things to accomplish this: a way to spin the discs, a mechanism to mount the arm, and some kind of controller so I can tell it how to move. For the controller, I can use these cheap encoder knobs. They're super simple to use, but watch what happens when I program this servo to follow the knob's movement. The knobs only have a resolution of about 18 degrees, so you can't really get precise measurements from them. Remember that, it'll be important later. For the mount, there are these little rails on the side, so I whipped up these keyed slots to match. It slides in really nicely, then the servos can screw in on the bottom here. Finally, I designed these 3D prints so the servos can turn the discs, but I could not get the servos to fit. I kept measuring and redesigning the discs until I noticed a tiny detail I was missing. This is the old disc, and this is the disc that works. See the difference yet? The nubs are 1 millimeter off center. After I realized that, I could finally test it. I put everything together, and it's working. It's hard to control, but it's clearly responding to my inputs on the controller. I used this popsicle stick to test if I could pick things up with it, and it's clearly doing a great job. Never mind. I tried to let go of the popsicle stick, but I turned the knob the wrong direction. I thought it just shot the stick away, but when I tried out the arm afterwards, one of the grippers refused to move. Remember when I mentioned that these encoder knobs aren't very precise? Well, when I turned them the wrong direction, that means they didn't just strain the arm a little bit, they tried as hard as they could to close the grippers, and then gripped the cables that make it work in the process. I have 2 problems to solve here. I need more precise encoder knobs, and I need to stop the servos from breaking the arm again. To protect the arm, I can program the controller to detect movements that might break it and avoid them, or I can use servos that are too weak to break it. I had some weaker servos on hand, so I switched to them instead so I could focus on the controller. I soldered up the new encoders I bought, 3D printed a knob, and I was surprised how easy they were to use. I connected this one to a multicolor LED, and it basically worked first try. But when I plugged in a second encoder, everything stopped working. The issue was in the protocol they used to communicate, I2C. With I2C, a controller and multiple target devices all share the same bus. Each target device has an address, and every command from the controller is addressed so the targets know who it's talking to. But these encoders all share the same address, so when the controller sends a command, they all respond at the same time, and the controller can't hear what anyone is saying. I need to talk to 4 encoders, but the microcontroller doesn't have enough separate buses. To solve this, I bought an I2C multiplexer. This chip sits between the controller and the targets, and splits the I2C bus into multiple separate channels that the controller can choose between. This worked initially, but off camera, I kept running into an issue where everything would freeze when trying to communicate with the multiplexer chip. I tried a bunch of solutions, but eventually I decided to replace it altogether. The RP2040 may only have 2 I2C buses, but it's fast enough that I can make it pretend to have more. Instead of telling some special hardware on the controller to be an I2C bus, I can bypass that and program each of the pins to pretend to be an I2C bus, and the encoders can't tell the difference. With my new interfaces, the encoders were finally working reliably, so I could test them with the weaker servos. Everything appeared to work at first, but I was getting these weird, intermittent issues where the servos would sometimes jump around without me touching knobs at all, or even ignore my commands. This brings up another benefit to switching to the smaller servos. Remember when I said that one way to prevent the servos from breaking the arm was to program them not to? Well, that method fails if the servos aren't listening to what I tell them, or even if I have a bug in my code that tells them to do the wrong thing. This happens all the time in bigger machines, even at the industrial scale. Using these weaker servos guarantees that the arm can't damage itself even if it wants to. It took me forever to figure out what was causing the servos to freak out. I tried turning off the lights to see if they were interfering. I tried adding capacitors to the servo control line, the power line, and even the encoder communication lines. Nothing worked until I tried only enabling a single servo in the microcontroller. Suddenly, it was working fine. I tried enabling the servo furthest away from the working one, and they both worked together. I reassigned the servo pins so they weren't right beside each other, and suddenly it was doing exactly what I tell it. I swapped the new arm in, and for once in my life, everything just worked on the first try. With everything working, it was finally time to try picking up a raisin. I started out just moving the arm around, getting a feel for the knobs. It's a lot harder than it looks, so it took me several minutes to get familiar with the controls. I went in for my first attempt, but those cheap servos have a terrible range of motion, so I can't reach with the grippers. I moved the raisin a bit to get it in range, but it didn't seem fair to grab the raisin after moving it, so I kind of reset the arm before giving it a second shot. It might look simple, but because I can't move the arm forward and backward or up and down, it's pretty hard to figure out a way to rotate everything to get where I want it to go. I managed to get the grippers situated around the edge of the skin, so I closed them, and it held. While this is ridiculously cool, I'm not out of the woods yet. I wanted to move the raisin to the other side of the arm, but because the servos limit the range of motion, I had to figure out the right way to twist it. I fumbled around a bit, accidentally pushing down into the platform, but I was able to drop the raisin right where I wanted. Just like that, I picked up a raisin, moved it, and put it down. That feels so good. Now, don't get me wrong, I know there's a lot of things to improve. To do anything useful, I need a second arm. I can't see myself doing surgery with these little knobs, so I'm gonna have to build a controller that's easier to use. These servos are also pretty imprecise and have a limited range of motion. I'd really like to try maybe some small stepper motors to see if I can get things moving more smoothly that way. And as it stands, the arms have a tiny range of motion. Just look at how small this is. I have plans for a bunch more improvements. So if you want to see more, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to tell the YouTube algorithm you want to see more from me. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.